For this experiment, we're going to be focusing on the topic of solubility, and specifically asking ourselves the question, why do some things dissolve in water and other things don't? In this experiment, we are going to be using solvents and solutes. Solutes are the items that are being dissolved. In this case, we have half a teaspoon of sugar, half a teaspoon of pepper, half a teaspoon of flour, and half a teaspoon of salt. Solvents are the things that the solutes are being dissolved in. In this case, we have 4 containers of warm water. You can use any temperature of water, but I find that using warm water speeds up the process. The first step in our experiment is to add all of the solutes to their solvents. And you're going to want to stir each of these for 30 seconds. Now that we have stirred all of our mixtures, let's go through and examine each of them. Let's start off with looking at sugar. As you can see, all the sugar has been dissolved and this just looks like normal water. This tells us 2 things. The first thing this tells us is that it is a homogeneous mixture. A homogeneous mixture is when everything is blended together perfectly and you can't see the separate ingredients. The second thing this tells us is that sugar is a polar molecule. A polar molecule forms with water molecules to create hydrogen bonds, and that's why it dissolves. Now let's look at pepper. As you can see, the pepper did not dissolve, and it actually created a layer at the bottom. This layer tells us that this is a heterogeneous mixture, which is when everything is not blended perfectly together. The next thing we know is that the molecules in pepper are nonpolar. Nonpolar means that they group together away from the water molecules. Now let's look at flour. It might be hard to tell, but the flour did not dissolve, and it even created a layer on the bottom like the pepper did. This tells us that this is a heterogeneous mixture and that the molecules are nonpolar. And lastly, let's examine salt. As you can see, the salt completely dissolved like the sugar did. This means that it is a homogeneous mixture and that the molecules are polar. And now we have come to the end of our solubility experiment. Today you guys learned the difference between homogeneous and heterogeneous mixtures and the difference between polar and nonpolar molecules. I hope you have a great rest of your day and keep learning.